Welcome to the Politics People. We're joined today by a superstar. Her YouTube channel alone has almost 1 million subscribers. Each of her videos garners millions of views. She's a political commentator, writer, public speaker. I'm talking today to Blaire White. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hi, of course. I'm glad to be on.
Are you conscious of the impact or any impact that you've had on politics?
Oh, wow. I feel like sometimes it's hard when you are the person creating the content to fully grasp the real world impact of what you're doing. But one of the things over the past couple years that's really helped me sort of grasp what I'm actually doing is I've started doing live speaking events. So I worked a lot with the Walk Away campaign, which is Brandon Strzok's movement, and they've put me on a lot of different speaking panels, and the meet and greets afterwards are always amazing. So getting to see my supporters, not just their screen names or their handles, and really having real life connections with them has really helped me see that I've actually created something pretty cool. And I hope, God willing, I can continue to do it for many years to come.
Yeah, you have created something that's very cool, actually. I mean, what was the intention? I mean, look, you've got a media empire now.
Oh, thanks.
You're actually massive. You really are massive. And but what did you set out to do? Did this happen by accident, or did you see this as a path to success?
It actually happened completely by accident, and I think that's the reason I've kind of stayed sane during this whole ride. This was never my goal, so I've always sort of just taken things as they came and rode the wave and told myself if it ended tomorrow, I've already done so much cool stuff that I'm fine with it. The reason I started was because I was in college and I was surrounded by people who vehemently disagreed with me. I had a few blossoming sort of right wing ideas about the world at the time, much less than I do now. I've definitely moved further right in the past couple of years. But at the time, I sort of inherently knew that I was outnumbered and that the things that I felt were not acceptable to state on campus or around my social group, which was heavily LGBT people around me, lots of liberals around me. And so, just out of a frustration of feeling unable to speak my mind in real life, I took to the camera and put up my first YouTube video. And I fully expected, 7 friends to watch it. And I woke up the next day and it had thousands of views, and it's only grown from there. It has truly been unexpected. I never wanted to be a public figure of any sort. It just kind of happened. And um, it's kind of shocking what's happened, really.
Well, this is, I mean, that's what this podcast's about, really. It's like I'm talking to people like you that are affecting the political sphere these days and have real leverage now, but aren't currently elected politicians. I don't know, is that something you'd ever pursue, actually, elected position in politics?
I think so. I don't want to jinx anything, but I'm 26, so I'm still pretty young. But I think once I hit the 30, I think that's when I'm really going to start thinking about potentially running for office of some sort.
Well, that's amazing. Well, obviously you should, and this is the whole world that you're in and are a pioneer of has kind of caught the traditional political establishment off guard, hasn't it? It's they didn't see you guys coming, and I don't mean your particular politics. I mean the fact that you have access to a massive audience via social media that was supposed to just be cat videos, and
Right.
it's now arguably it created Brexit, it definitely created Trump, and people like
Absolutely.
you are riding that wave, and it's a navigate. That's what I wanted to capture with this podcast. Basically, is people like you affecting the social discourse, and just what are the meat and potatoes of actually making that happen. Basically, if we were doing this 60 years ago, I'd be talking to you about show business and filmmaking.
Mm.
You are affecting change by this social media stuff. So, yeah, sorry, I'm just waffling. It's after the surprise of the success, the initial success you've got, it's just like it must be a bit like surfing or trying to ride this wave with some idea now of a target.
Absolutely. And what I'm so grateful for, and I think is such an amazing opportunity to change the world is the fact that my audience, unlike I think most right-wing political commentators, my audience is almost exclusively young people. We're talking ages 13 to 25. That is my core audience. Very, very young to just, mid 20s. And that's actually not very common. Most Republican commentators that I know of, whether I know them personally or just online, their demographics tend to be a bit older. So I think just the fact that I diversify my content a bit and I do regular sort of lifestyle type videos and I'm into, fashion and makeup and things that I think more young people relate to. I've definitely been able to expose younger people who maybe were more so disinterested in politics or maybe put off by sort of the older right wing establishment. I've given them actually a gateway into it. That's the main thing that I hear all the time, whether I meet my supporters out in public or at events, is they're usually young teenagers and they tell me, you got me into politics or you made me a Republican. And that I'm really proud of.
Is there? Are you conscious of like show business there being a rivalry and a pecking order amongst this crop of political commentators?
Yes, absolutely. It can definitely get very catty. I've learned to um, really just take it in stride. Like I said, I really just try to ride the wave. I try not to get too caught up in the fact that there are definitely, some people who are not so genuine or not so cool in real life that are involved in everything. But I think in 2020 in particular, what's really uniting a lot of people, especially on the right, is the fact that they are up against quite a bit when it comes to where the left is currently. And there's a lot at stake in this election. And so, I don't have a problem with anyone in the political commentary sphere because I feel like right now it's time to set aside differences and really fight for this election, really.
No, I agree with you, but I really do agree with you. But I do love gossip, and
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I
yeah.
do love who hates who. I just think that's the best.
I definitely there is plenty of gossip to go around and you hear about, such and such and what this person did at an event or, you know, this person may have been doing this drug before they met this politician, just a lot of stuff. But um, I definitely am trying to just keep it all in perspective lately.
Yeah, well, just save it for the autobiography as well, isn't it? Just name names. But
Yeah.
so, but politically, then you touched on it, but your journey was from the left. Then, I mean, you're now part of the walk away movement.
Yeah.
Where did you start politically? How left were you? How does that even manifest?
It's interesting. A lot of people on the right these days talk about their move from left to right, or, maybe the 2016 election woke them up per se. But for me, I was left as a teenager for sure, but pretty much right when I became an adult and I started facing, real things like bills and personal responsibility and all that stuff, I actually started moving to the right fairly quickly once I was out on my own. So right when I got into college was about the time I started moving right. And, you know, I actually voted for Trump in 16. I know a lot of public figures on the right now didn't even vote for Trump in 2016. So it's actually been a while for me. My entire adult life, pretty much, I have identified at least right leaning.
It does. That's really interesting. Okay, look, we haven't even mentioned the fact. I mean, I just think it's a bit, and no disrespect to you at all, but the least significant thing that you're doing, I think, from my point of view, is the fact that you are trans and talk about trans in regard to politics, even though it's not your biggest interest.
Yeah, I definitely am trans and I definitely make a point to discuss that on my channel. And the reason I do that is because I don't particularly like the fact that the left seems to have a monopoly on the entire topic of transgender people and gay people. And,
Yeah.
I think it's very important that there are voices on the right that are speaking to those issues as well. Um, and so I definitely, as long as there are the more extremist radicals on the left talking about, trans issues, I definitely think it's important for me to always be out there sort of providing a balance to it. And that's the main takeaway I think that a lot of people, when they come to my channel, have is I have a lot of Republican followers who find my channel, and by the first or second video, maybe they'll see eventually that I'm trans, and it changes their perspective of trans people entirely. Because I think there is a misconception on the right that transgender people are sort of an invention of the left,
Yeah.
that wasn't always a thing. But in reality, trans has always been a thing and will always be a thing. And there are many right wing and Republican and conservative trans people that may seem like an oxymoron to some, but being a part of the community, I definitely know that they're out there. It's just that they feel very outnumbered, and they
Mm.
feel very they're scared to risk and compromise their social circles and jobs and everything by speaking out. So in that sense, I am lucky that my job is to speak out.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's. I was just going to say, and I'm not trying to be cute or corny, but it's just like coming out as right or conservative or centre right conservative is probably more difficult now than coming out as trans.
Right. I mean, everyone's story is different, so it definitely depends where you live, who your family is. But I will say, from my personal experience, when I came out as trans at age 20, I'm almost 27 now, I didn't lose a single friend. When I came out as a Republican, I lost almost all of my friends. So
Wow.
take that what you will, you know.
Oh, isn't that's just hideous, isn't it? That just and again, of the two disciplines, if there are two disciplines, you'd think that being on the right is obviously the kind of politics of the individual, of supporting the individual
Yes.
above the group, and it's just it's so opportunist to me that the left have tried to steal the colours of that kind of movement. It's so
Hmm.
dishonest, but. Actually, I really didn't want to dwell on that because I was going to see if I can go the whole interview without that. But what I was really impressed by, and if I was answering my own first question about what influence you've had, what you do, which I think is rare among the actual political vloggers, is, and I was just watching a video before, one of your videos before I came on here actually, is what you do is drill down into stats. So you drill down into the story. You'll actually find if a story is substantiated. So what I thought was really powerful that you did, by the way, was a video at the end of July, and it was about the impact like that Trump had on trans people and
Yeah.
his view of Trump. But you didn't just, like, even I'll just like spout an opinion without doing any research. You know what I mean? You went through point by point
Right.
surgically, uh, actually backing up any kind of conclusion that you'd come to. That's rare. That's why I was asking you about elected politics, because it's that kind of forensic mind, I think, that's needed to counter these arguments.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that video in particular was an important one for me just because I feel like there is so much misinformation out there in terms of Trump and his relation to trans rights or the trans community or whatever. I feel like every other month there's a new hysterical headline saying that, Trump is attacking trans people, and it is pretty much always completely fabricated. But unfortunately, when you tell a lie enough times, it becomes the truth in many people's heads. So pretty much, most people on the left do think these things are true. And so it was very important for me to say, actually, Trump didn't take away healthcare for trans people. Actually, Trump didn't make it illegal to change your birth gender on your birth certificate. But these are things that a lot of people on the left believe because they read the headline and that's it for them. So I do like to do some myth busting and, you know, frankly, I don't think Trump is this threat to trans people or any group of people. And I do plan on voting for him in November, no matter what. Yeah.
No, good for you. I think we're in a cultural war at the moment. I don't think this is
Yes.
politics. That's the thing. I say the whole we're doing this interview just at the end of the week of the DNC conference, and it's just like, this is not political. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference who the VP is. It's not going to blind bit of difference what policy is. It's like we are fighting. I think we're fighting for people to actually tell the truth and to try and have some kind of national identity.
Absolutely. I think the election is coming down to either America is to be wholly condemned and is a racist country with no redeeming qualities, and we have to burn it all down and build it back up again differently, or America is worth fighting for. America is built upon ideas that, although are flawed and although we can refine, is definitely worth saving. And for me, I am voting in favor of people who believe this country is worth saving and continuing to tweak and refine so that we do meet the entire promise of the founding fathers and what we have built this country upon. Um, the message of the left, and you mentioned the DNC, um, the message right now is hopelessness from the left. There was nothing inspiring about what I've seen from the DNC the past 4 days. There was nothing, if they wanted to instill hope and make people think that they're voting for hope on that side, they did not achieve that. It was very depressing watching the DNC. It was basically, everything is messed up and it's irredeemable unless we vote Trump out. Their entire message is just vote against Trump. And what's amazing is that that was their message in 2016 and it didn't work. So I think we're looking at a party who didn't really learn many lessons since 2016.
Absolutely. And if they did, it was in the form of, is it Tulsi Gabbard? Is that her name? Tulsi?
Yeah.
And she wasn't even invited to the DNC, even though she got more delegates than Kamala.
Right.
It's again, my sort of ideal scenario for it is that hopefully the US goes through what the UK went through in 2019, and that's a total routing of the left after being, lauded by the media, and then finally the adults come home and somebody like a Tulsi ends up being the candidate in future. That side of the party gets to come back and fix everything.
So.
I hope so.
I really hope so because, I don't know what things are like in the UK right now, but in the US, I live in Los Angeles and it feels like a third world country right now, constant riots, things are on fire. Like there's so much violence and riots here that the media just stopped reporting on it. And, part of that is they don't like to report on it. And the second part is it's every night. So what are we just going to report it every night? No. The homeless issue here is just so out of control. And what's really scary is that a lot of the homeless people I'm seeing lately have iPhones.
Yes.
They look clean, they look groomed, and it's because a few months ago they had a job. And we have locked down so severely here that there were people that were doing fine before that are completely without a pot to piss in now. And to me, there is only one way to vote, and it is against the people who enabled this to happen to a beautiful city. Say what you want about Los Angeles. It's a beautiful city, and it's becoming ruined. It really is. I don't want to sound dramatic, but the city is really crumbling. I'm actually moving to Texas.
Well, this is what I was going to address. Well, I live in LA too. I've been here 30 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The accent fooled me.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to hold on to it. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, part of the degeneration of Los Angeles began because I moved here, so I do take responsibility. But no, you're entirely right. Now you live, and I don't want to give too many details, but you're more. I'm East LA basically, and you're Hollywood, aren't you?
Yeah.
And that is brutal. I mean, I can't even drive through there. I go by the 10 now instead of ever risking taking Sunset. It's or Hollywood Boulevard. It's my friend lives there, and I visited, and I thought she was exaggerating, and you've just understated the whole thing, frankly.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, we had to evacuate our own home, and we went up into the mountains into Big Bear, California. We were going to go for only a few days. We ended up there for 2 weeks in an Airbnb because it just wasn't safe to return back home. And the riots have calmed down a bit now, so it's a little more safe to be home. But it's just crazy. And the fact that every major Democratic politician has co-signed it is what really blows my mind. And the fact that people don't see, there's just so many people still in the city that are just so blinded. It's like, you live in a Democrat city that's been Democrat forever, and you see all these problems, and you somehow still convince yourself that it's Trump doing this. It's like, I don't understand where people's heads are sometimes.
No, exactly. I want the similarity I was going to say with the UK. is that you couldn't find a serious commentator that would say that Labour going into the 2019 election, the equivalent to the Dems, that Labour were just insane.
Yeah.
You couldn't find a serious commentator to say that. On the very day, and I quote this all the time, on the very day of the election, the headline in one of the newspapers was Youthquake. And it was this tide of students and young people that were going to rout this fascist government finally. And Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, ended up actually getting double the majority that Margaret Thatcher had won in 1979. And she's obviously a sort of symbol of the right. Do you sense that my shorthand is we don't riot, we vote? Do you sense that people are just sitting on their hands waiting for November the 3rd so that they can actually vote, they can deluge the votes and rout this entire political class?
God, I hope so. I really, really hope that, you know, I was talking about this the other day. You know, Republicans typically are peaceful people who follow the rules, who don't want to be out in the streets screaming and acting a fool. You know, they just want to pay their mortgage, they want to be left alone, they want basic rights, and they want to secure freedom for their families. None of that involves going on the streets and screaming and rioting and looting. And we do vote. And that's what I hope is going to happen. What I fear is that Republicans have become maybe a little complacent, and they think that the insanity of the left and how bad things have gotten, that everyone must vote for Trump. I saw people saying, "Oh, there's going to be a red wave in California. California's going to flip red." No, it's not. As someone who lives here, everyone is still very indoctrinated here with leftist ideology. Like,
Yeah.
what's happened has only made people who were, leftists before, like extreme leftists. So, that type of rhetoric does scare me. A lot of serious commentators I respect are on Twitter saying there's going to be a red wave in California. No, we really have to get out there and vote. If you're living in a swing state, you really got to get out there and vote Trump, because I don't know. I'm hopeful that he's going to win. I really am. But I don't want
I'm going to tell you now, he's going to win. He's going to win. I think he's already won.
I hope so.
I tell you, look, I got two things, all right? And this is my cod sense, all right? If the Democrats thought they could win this year, they'd have run Hillary, okay? That's my horse sense on the whole thing. You wouldn't run... Biden isn't even... who's the Mormon that the Republicans ran against Obama? I can never remember his name.
Romney?
Yeah, he's not even a Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was... to actually like run a state and things,
Yeah.
And the second thing is, I think a bunch of Trump supporters didn't vote last time. I think they bought the hat and sat at home and protested, thinking it was a protest vote and not worth their while. I think there's a good 3 to 5% of Trump supporters who didn't vote because nobody believed he could win. So they bought
Yeah.
the hat. They will vote this time.
I can't actually speak to that. I voted Trump, and I proudly said online that I was voting Trump, but I also said online, I know he's not going to win. I remember saying that. I said, I'm going to vote for Trump, but y'all know Hillary's going to win, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I think there was that sense of this is a pie in the sky sort of thing, that Trump could possibly beat Hillary Clinton, who's been in the game for, decades. But so I absolutely hope you're right, that even those people that didn't vote last time come through this time, because we need it. We really do.
We really do. I don't take it for granted at all, and I don't think it's easy. But when you have the entire, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but it is extraordinary to see just the entire establishment just saying absolutely anything. There's like a Simpsons episode where Steve Martin is running to be like the head of garbage in Springfield,
Mm-hmm.
and Steve Martin, he's running against Homer, and he's complaining to Homer that he's printing lies about him, And Homer had written on a leaflet that Steve Martin's character was luring children to his gingerbread house, It's just like, you go, oh, that was just a lie, and it's
Right.
and it is this absurd now. It's like Trump. They've overshot the runway on lying about him. Basically, I think there hasn't been a single arrow that's actually effectively hit him in probably 3 years now, because you can't actually believe the accusations anymore. They're just untenable.
Yeah, 100%. I think that The media's just constant second by second attacks on him have really, I think people have become numb to it. You know, it's like I could probably read a report that Trump like shot a puppy in the face,
Mm.
and I'd be like, okay, I don't care, because I know it's going to be some, at the very least, a half truth and most likely a complete lie. So I think that there is that effect as well. I think you're right.
But this is where people like you come in, you see. This is the thing. I think the first sign of the power of things like YouTube, and I bang on about this, was Nigel Farage having his speeches in the European Parliament broadcast on YouTube. He had them uploaded to YouTube immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody, and this was from 2004, I think, the inception of YouTube, and nobody really, like I said, it was, the history of dance and kittens and stuff. Nobody saw what was coming, I think, with it. And he was able to go directly into the retina of like-minded people, and
Mm-hmm.
that caught on. And as I say, people like you are doing exactly the same thing, and this is just growing exponentially. Not even year on year anymore; it's month on month.
Yes.
You must feel that you are now a legitimate broadcaster. You're not like some add-on to a legitimate TV show. You are a major corporation in your own right, influencing and at least offering a viable platform for people to explore other political ideas without necessarily just swallowing the indoctrination.
Oh, thank you. And actually, one of the things I'm really proud of is I would say my audience is almost 50-50. I have a lot of liberals who follow me. And, my goal is to never, I mean, I do wish for everyone to vote Trump in November. I really do, because I think there's a lot at stake if not. But at the end of the day, my goal is not to make anyone believe exactly what I believe. I've always just called myself, I can't swear on here, can I, or can I?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Whenever anyone asks me what I think of what I do, whatever, I always describe myself as just a bitch with an opinion. I literally just say I'm just a person with an opinion. And for some weird reason, a lot of people have latched on and decided to take me seriously. But at the end of the day, if at the very least, even if I don't convert people to being Republicans, if I simply open up some liberals' minds into realizing that Republicans are not demons that are hell bent on like ruining their lives and just horrible racist people, that's enough for me, frankly, because I, along with, I would assume, a lot of Americans right now are so sick and fed up of how incredibly divided and tribal and heated everything is all of the time. I don't like that you know, I that we all feel uncomfortable to say our opinions in front of certain crowds and, like I said, losing all my friends for my opinions. I don't think that fundamentally is what America is about. I would love, no matter who wins this election, I would love for us to sort of just start balancing out a little bit and just returning to a time where you could go back and forth about certain ideas. I mean, I remember a time where growing up, I think one of the good examples is I remember when gay marriage was one of the biggest debates going on television and in the media. And I remember growing up and watching people debate these things. And yeah, it was passionate. Sometimes it was heated. But the person maybe opposing gay marriage wasn't instantly like blacklisted from society and written off as a homophobe who's never to have a career again. And that's kind of how it is right now.
Well, one,
And I
one,
don't.
well, one of at least one of them became president. I mean, that was Obama's position.
Right, right. Keep in mind, Trump is the first and only president to go into office supporting gay marriage. And
Yeah.
for everyone who says that he hates trans people, um, newsflash, he actually ran, maybe people don't know this, but he actually ran, I think it was Miss Universe or Miss, what was it? The pageant that he did for
He
a
did
while?
Miss Universe, yeah.
Miss Universe, and there was actually a transsexual woman who, the media was attacking her at the time, saying she shouldn't be able to
Oh, yeah.
participate because she wasn't a natural born female. And Trump actually came out and said she can do it. She looks beautiful. She's a woman, whatever. It's like, he's come out and said that Caitlyn Jenner can use whatever bathroom she wants in his
Mm-hmm.
hotels.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, they try to paint him as this person, and it's just not how he is, I don't think. Nothing he's done points to any type of hatred towards trans people. The closest thing you could possibly pinpoint is the trans military ban, but it's not as clear and cut as people think that it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I'm just a complete libertarian on these things, and I'm like, my position. was really, up until I saw your video, my position is it's like, look, if trans people are forced to pay tax, then they should be joining the army, you know? Or they should be allowed to join the army. But you made a very good point in one of your videos, is that they could be deployed into countries where just simply being transgender would, if they were captured, it's actually illegal and they could be punished just for that alone, let alone being a part of the US combat battalion.
Yeah, absolutely. And even further than that, many people see this as inflammatory to state, but at the end of the day, transgender people do suffer from gender dysphoria, which does require medication. And it's something that is very mentally distressing to trans people. And at the end of the day, even for people who are not trans trying to join the military, if you have like a crooked pinky toe, you can't join. Like they're very strict about conditions and health issues and anything. So I understand the position that maybe trans people should not be in combat for a lot of different reasons. And I don't think that holding that position inherently means that you hate trans people. I think that's irrational.
I'm very strongly of the position that if there is a war, that I definitely am happy with the trans person going in my place. That's how magnanimous I am. If they,
Awesome.
yeah, if they anything that keeps me away from the field of battle, I totally
Yeah,
support.
absolutely. And frankly, I don't want to be drafted. So Trump,
No.
you can ban trans people for as long as you want, because I'm not trying to be drafted for anything. I would be useless.
Well, yeah, no, that's I only found out this recently that males 18 to 25 in the US actually have to register for the draft. I only found this out in the last couple of weeks. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, when you turn 18 and you go in and you get your state ID, you have to sign up for the draft. It's pretty crazy.
It is. It's actually so amazing, isn't it? Because it does. As a Brit, you kind of wonder how all those guys are burning their draft cards and stuff, and you go, "How do they know where you live?" And it's like, "Oh, because you told them. You told them at that time you
Yeah.
got your driver's license." It's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. But no, it's you touched on it a little bit, and I'm gonna let you have your life back soon. But I could just listen to you all day. This is such good stuff.
Oh, thank
But
you.
you've got liberal friends. Have you got any teetering liberal friends who are thinking maybe almost like coming out basically? Do you have people that confide in you that they don't buy the BS any longer but are too afraid to come out?
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's, I know people in LA who definitely, through especially the recent events, whether it be the pandemic and the riots, whatever, not a lot, I have to be honest, but a couple of them that are trying to think of things in a different way. They're seeing what's going on and they're questioning, is this all because of Trump, or could it be the fact that I'm living in a blue state, in a blue city that's been blue forever?
Mm.
Um, and then, of course, my audience, I think, is about 50-50. That's another big difference between me and a lot of right-wing political commentators is I feel that I'm very accessible to liberals. I think, honestly, if I'm just being frank, I think the trans thing gives me a window to liberals. I think a lot of them see a trans person and maybe they see my politics as secondary, whereas Republicans tend to see my politics first and my trans as secondary. So I think either way, I have a good window into both sides of the coin, which I really, really value because no one wants to be talking to only people that agree with them constantly and vice versa. At least I don't. I try to consume a lot of leftist media as well
Mm.
because I feel that it strengthens my arguments and it lets me know what I'm up against. And I feel that I can always kind of tell when I'm, listening to or watching a right wing commentator who clearly probably doesn't watch any leftist media because when someone is in an echo chamber, and I never want that to be me. So,
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. It's important because again, we're not involved in politics. That's what's not happening at the moment. This is culture. This is
yes,
and it's almost this is to me what must have happened with like the Spanish Inquisition and the Catholic torturing of people on the continent of Europe. It's just like you have to say and believe these phrases and verses. You have to recite them off by heart, or you will be executed. You have to, true. Was
yeah,
it faith is believing something that you know isn't true? You know.
absolutely. I think, God, they're going to look back at this time in history, and I think it's going to have some kind of, crazy name for this time. It's going to be, people are going to look back at this as a great time of awakening for a lot of people and a huge, no pun intended, definitely a time of transition for this country, for sure.
God, a better broadcaster than I would end on that, because that is a fantastic outline. But I'm gonna plow on for another couple of minutes and just
Sure.
abuse your good nature.
No problem.
So what do you see as the end game here then? What do you think? Because uh, it's a long-winded. I only do long-winded questions, I have to say.
It's
But
fine.
the Tea Party only started in 2009, and it got a president by 2016.
Right.
What is the end game? Like, if Trump loses, I'm fine, because it's like the opposition will be redoubled in the same way the left has been redoubled by the appointment of Trump. And if he wins, I just think it's paradise within the next decade. What's your view of the next decade in politics?
I hope that regardless of who wins, we start to, as I said earlier, just balance out a little bit, like I think if Trump wins, the left has to take a really hard look at itself. It has to do the sort of introspection that they didn't do in 2016, 2017, 2018, and now, right? They have to really say, okay, maybe having no gatekeeping towards the extremists on our side was a very bad idea. Because at the end of the day, leftist extremists are so far off from what the average American wants and believes and feels comfortable with that right now they're kind of hedging their bets on their extremists, right? Like they're letting their extremists very much
Absolutely.
control the party. I will never forget as long as I live this summer in June when plastered everywhere was defund the police. How radical of a concept is that? Like, that is so far beyond what I ever thought I would see as a mainstream position. But you had every leftist politician, and they're already, sort of backtracking now that things have calmed down a little bit. But I will never forget that they all went along with that. I will never forget that they all encouraged the riots and the looting and the protesting. So what I'm hoping is that if Trump wins, the left finally takes that introspective look that they need. And I hope that the right sort of does everything they can to ensure the policies that, will live on past Trump. And if the left wins in November, I hope to God that things don't just crumble. I'm afraid that they will, to be honest.
I'm just a huge optimist. Honestly, I make you a solemn promise. It's not going to crumble. There's less to this than meets the eye. I think what we're seeing is the death throes of. I think Eisenhower called it the industrial military complex. I think we're seeing the death throes of a kind of globalist project in the last 30 years, and it's basically making a lot of noise before it actually gets expunged. Is my take on it. I don't. I see people coming to, if I can say, our side of the political debate. I don't see too many people leaving and going to the left.
That's true, actually. I think there are much more people. I mean, maybe it's just the algorithm on my social media, accounts or whatever, but I actually do feel like I see a lot more people moving to the right than vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as public or visible as you, but I'm just this enormous potato of a man in East LA who's openly Trump, and I do get a lot of people approaching me, kind of confessing, if you like, that
That's good.
you know, and I've gone even more hardcore now. I won't even entertain people sort of even dismissing him and saying, well, I like him, but I don't like the tweets or whatever. It's just like, no, he's perfect. Everything he's doing is absolutely perfect and necessary, and every tiny little sort of thread that they try and unravel by sort of
Yeah.
just these kind of, well, he's this, he's what, he's actually really good. I just I see him on TV. He seems very kind largely. He's like
Yes.
doesn't attack first. He's a counter puncher. He's not a puncher. He's never attacked anyone first.
Right. And you know what's amazing is that leftists do not watch Trump's speeches. They do not watch anything he does in its entirety or even a little
Mm.
bit. They're fed headlines from people who want them to believe certain things about his speech. I've watched it in real time. When he started doing the COVID updates at the beginning of the pandemic was when I because even I, as a Trump supporter, I wasn't tuned into every speech he made or you know, everything he did, but I started really tuning into everything he was doing at the beginning of the pandemic. And I could rarely find anything wrong with his behavior, his demeanor, his speeches. But without fail, every time I'd be done watching it, I'd log on to Twitter and there would be a million headlines about, they dig into one small thing he said and make it something huge that it wasn't. And it was just amazing. And so that's why, as much as it's frustrating to see people who are so fooled by it, I can't even blame them, because if you're only
Sure.
reading headlines, it's like, of course you're going to feel that way. But I do hope that it has, like I said, a numbing effect. And I think you're right. It has a numbing effect. It's just not as effective as it used to be, these hits on him.
Oh, it's fantastic! What a great note to end this on. And the nightmare of talking to me for more than 30 minutes now comes to an end.
No, it was great. It was great.
You can have your life back. Listen, I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's so enlightening, and I'm just gonna, I can have any effect on your career at all. But anyway, I'm gonna blast this as much as I can. Blaire
Oh,
White,
thanks.
Blaire White, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. You have an amazing day.
Ditto.